The Kansas City Chiefs and New York Giants enter their Week 3 primetime matchup with identical 0-2 records. Will this be the get-right game for the Chiefs, or will the New York Giants surprise? Locked On Giants, Locked On Chiefs crossover Thursday starts right now.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome on into a special crossover edition, Locked On Giants, Locked On Chiefs. My name is Patricia Traina, host of Locked On Giants, and I am joined by the dynamic duo Ryan Tracy, Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs. And we are here with a special crossover edition. And today's episode of Locked On Giants, Locked On Chiefs is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. And gentlemen, we got a lot to cover. We're going to start off with a look at the key storylines, the biggest storylines that we're going to swing over to matchups. And then we'll talk about keys in the third segment. So welcome on in, guys. Welcome on in to everybody. All right, guys, since you are the visitors, I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to ask you, what is the big storyline brewing down in Kansas City?
0-2. That's the big storyline.
We know it. We feel it.
I don't know. I don't know how else you could really look at it. Like, and don't get me wrong. Like, I look at this schedule that the Chiefs have had, and they've had two tough games. You play against the Chargers, who usually play them tough. They should be in contention maybe for the division this year. And then you play the Super Bowl champions week 2. And I understand the thought process of being 0-2. I didn't think that they would be here because I thought that they would play better. And you go back to the Brazil game, they came out flat. They didn't look like they were really wanting to be there and playing a football game. And then you watch the Eagles game, and while the defense took a big step forward, the offense kind of still was back and holding and just kind of holding on. They weren't really doing anything. So to me, that's the big storyline. 0-2, Kansas City cannot afford to get to a point where they dropped 0-3.
I have to admit, Ms. Patricia, that is a similar storyline in New York, right? But is there subtext? What's the bigger thing for the Giants?
Well, the bigger thing for the Giants is, will they get Andrew Thomas back? I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs, that defensive front has just been absolutely, it's one of the best defensive fronts, I think, in football. Chris Jones, Steve Spagnuolo, old friend, Giant fans know him very well, obviously, and what he brings and all the little mischievous things he can do on defense. So if the Giants are going to get Andrew Thomas back, this would be a great week for that to happen. Now, for Giant fans wondering, Andrew Thomas did practice on Wednesday. He was limited, but head coach Brian Daboll said that he took most of the snaps, which is a positive thing. Now, the key here is going to be, will Andrew Thomas practice again on Thursday and on Friday? And even if he's limited, we will see him on Sunday, I would think.
That's going to be a challenge. And I know the Chiefs are trying to sort out some of their early pass rush as well. I think the matchup there is very intriguing. Charles Menu has not been performing as they would like. Obviously, Thomas has a little bit more experience. If they flip it, they move things around. George Karlaftis is a power player. I wouldn't say that he's elite quickness, but just show some get off from time to time. And there's even a possibility of moving Chris Jones outside. So the question mark becomes is, if he's there, is that the best place for the Chiefs to attack? I kind of think so, but how do you feel?
On the edges, I think, Jermaine Oluminor has been rock solid. He's been their best offensive lineman. Andrew Thomas, like I said, if he returns, that's going to be a big, boost. Although the kid, Marcus Bowe, who stepped in for James Hudson after that epic meltdown, wasn't too bad. But where I am most concerned when it comes to the Giants versus the Chiefs, that Chiefs defensive front, I'm concerned about the interior. That's where I am. I mean, the interior has been the biggest problem for that offensive line. And, it's interesting because I know Steve Spagnuolo likes to throw a lot of stunts and blitzes, and just disguise things. And at center, we've got John Michael Schmitz, who an intelligent center, but does he have the strength? Does he have the quickness to keep up with that Chiefs defensive front, which is so quick off the snap?
Yeah, and I think the thing that's going to be really intriguing for me on that is you mentioned Chris Jones, and he's a phenomenal player, and I do agree that I think that Spagnuolo is going to blitz. But the thing that is going to, I think, work in the Giants' favor to an extent is you have a veteran quarterback that has seen just about everything in Russell Wilson, and so he's going to know where the blitz is coming from. And the one thing that really stood out to me and that really surprised me last week with the Chiefs was blitzing so much Jalen Hurts. I don't think you can get away with that against Russell Wilson because I think Russell Wilson will make you pay for it. When you flip it over, though, and you look at the Chiefs' offensive line, and I have to tell you, I get a little nervous thinking about going against Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns because that pass rush can be formidable, and that is something that the Chiefs have struggled with in the past. Not necessarily as much this year, but what do you see there?
Yeah, as far as, the Giants, I did want to throw out a stat while we're on the subject real quick
Sure.
of pressure and whatnot. According to True Media, the Giants, they've actually handled blitzes and pressures well, all things considered. Only once one of their sacks that they've given up has come via the pressure. So, again, the interior of the offensive line, and John Runyon Jr. is one of the players who's kind of, he's got a back issue. John Michael Schmitz was limited with a toe issue. I'm just worried about the speed. And as far as, the Giants aspect of it, Kayvon, you mentioned Kayvon Thibodeau, he's playing some of his best ball. And, he's not getting a lot of credit. A lot of people, look and they say, oh, Brian Burns is on fire. He's had 3 sacks in the last 2 games. But Kayvon Thibodeau playing some of his best ball this year.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I cannot wait for this matchup because, as I said, with the main storyline, Chiefs need to find a way to get a win against the Giants team that is also 0-2. And I watched some of that Giants and Cowboys game. It sure looked like the Giants were going to get a win at the very end of it.
Yeah, that I thought so too. But, Dak Prescott turns into a magician against the Giants. And guys, let me ask you a question. What's been missing from the Chiefs that they've started off 0-2? What do you think isn't there that was there maybe in past years?
When I look at it, I just think it's consistency. Like you look at the play calling, sometimes the play calling gets real conservative. Sometimes it's a little bit more aggressive, but Mahomes still hasn't been consistent being able to hit the different plays that have been called. And it's consistency with the players that they have as well. I mean, you look at Xavier Worthy going out 3 plays into the season, not having him, not having Rashee Rice, not having some of the weapons on offense really, I think, has hurt Kansas City, and they just haven't found a way to adjust at this point.
Ryan, you agree?
I do, and it's a lack of cohesiveness at this point. We saw an offense that came out ready to roll week 1 in a foreign country. Defense flatter than a pancake. They come out, the defense turns it around in week 2. Offense can't seem to get out of its own way at this point. And it's a tale of not everyone being on the same page, not just in terms of the scheme that they're running on the field, but the intensity level that they bring, the preparation that they bring, and understanding that this is not only a team that has to play 11 guys on a side of the ball, but both sides of the ball and special teams all have to pull together. It feels like it's a younger team than the roster really indicates, but they're still trying to pull it together.
All right. Well, when we come back, we are going to take a look at some of the key matchups. We've kind of touched on it a little bit, but we're going to dive a little deeper into the key matchups here on this special crossover edition, Locked On Giants, Locked On Chiefs. Hang out with us, folks. We'll be right back. Today's episode of Crossover Thursday is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence throughout almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, moved and be moved. All right, everybody, welcome back to this crossover edition Locked On Giants, Locked On Chiefs. I'm Patricia, Traina of Locked On Giants. They are Ryan Tracy and Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs. And guys, we touched a little bit on it in the first segment, but let's really dive in here on the matchups. What's going to be the make or break matchup, do you feel, that's going to decide the scheme in favor of the Chiefs?
Offensively, I think it comes down to Josh Simmons versus whoever the edge rusher is against him. And it's honestly not even because of the pass rush near as much as it is. He has to show consistency week to week to week, because when you watch Patrick Mahomes play, you watch him get happy feet, you watch him bail out of clean pockets. And until he trusts the protection on his backside, it's going to continue to be an issue. And that's something that as soon as Josh Simmons shows that he can be consistent every single week, and I think he's played well, to be clear. I'm just saying it has to show over a longer period of time than just a couple of weeks. And I think he's getting there. I think Mahomes is starting to trust him. But to me, that's one of the biggest matchups in this game.
Ryan, any thoughts?
I look at the other side, and I'm always trying to attack the quarterback. For Russ, who I think really got going last week, and two outstanding performances by two of the wide receivers, it comes down to what is a young secondary for the Kansas City Chiefs. Trent McDuffie gets a lot of fanfare, as he deserves, but the rest of the group is still also finding their way to come together. They lost a leader in the back of that secondary in Justin Reed, and now that's being filled by Brian Cook and Jaden Hicks, a second-year player who has a lot of talent. Hasn't seen enough snaps for me to feel super comfortable. So it's that duel about how they can protect themselves from Russ becoming Super Russ, and making sure that they take away some of those things that I felt the Cowboys got lulled into, that Russ was able to take advantage of. So I want to guard very heavily against underestimating Mr. Wilson.
All right, now from the Giants' perspective, I'm going to go with the low-hanging fruit here, only because of the injury situation. I'm going to say Travis Kelce, who I know hasn't quite looked like the Travis Kelce maybe of years past, but the situation with the Giants, they are banged up at inside linebacker, all right? Darius Muaso, who stepped in for Micah McFadden, he's probably not going to play this weekend. He's in the concussion protocol. They have Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, who's dealing with an injury. I don't think he's going to play. Chris Board was placed on IR this past week. He's not going to play. And I was joking with one of the offensive linemen today in the locker room. I said, hey, can you go out and play inside linebacker? And he was like, I do it in practice, So I'm like, hey, maybe they'll put you out there. So that's a big concern. Now, in addition to the fact that the Giants, we're not quite sure who's going to play inside linebacker, I think it's going to be Swayze Bozeman, who they promoted from their practice squad. The two safeties, Tyler Nubin and Javon Holland, haven't quite clicked yet. Tyler Nubin, through 2 games, he looked so good last year. And I thought, okay, he's going to be ready to take that next big step. But this year, he's missed a lot of tackles. And, Kelce, even though Kelce might be on the downside, he's a tough guy to bring down. So I'm a little concerned about the middle of the defense. And we saw last week with the Giants how the middle of the defense was so soft against, Jake Ferguson, how he had that big 18-yard pickup. So the Giants got to do something to keep Travis Kelce, because I still think, at the end of the day, he's the guy that Patrick Mahomes is going to be looking for.
I do think that it's kind of funny. You mentioned Swayze Bozeman, and I'm just sitting here going, oh, man, that brings back memories, because he was in Kansas City for a time. Yeah. So you look at that, and that's a matchup that Kansas City should be trying to attack, because Travis Kelce, while I agree, I think he is on the backside of his career, obviously that's a matchup that they should be able to exploit. I'm really going to be curious, though, how Kansas City is going to really attack the Giants in the passing game other than Travis Kelce. It's how do they use their wide receivers to try to go at the corners, and how do they attack not only the corners, but as you said, the safeties with some of those wide receivers, and like a Tyquan Thornton, who's been a guy that's been catching deep balls from Patrick Mahomes. How is that going to play into this matchup with Patrick wanting to throw the ball deep?
And I want to ask and get a little inside intel. Holland in particular, the matchup is very intriguing to me. So what can you tell us, if anything, about what maybe that might look like?
Yeah, interesting you asked that. The Giants, what they've been doing is they've kind of been rotating their corners at CB2. So on one side, You have Paulson Adebo, who was previously with the Saints, and he's done pretty well. I mean, he's had last week maybe he left a few plays out there that I think he would have liked to have back. But here's what's interesting: at cornerback 2, they had a competition the Giants did all summer long between Cordell Flott and Deontay Banks, their 2023 first-round pick. Nobody officially won that job. So what they have done is they have put Cordell Flott out there for first and second down, and then they put Deontay Banks out there for third down, obvious passing downs. Now, the thing with Deontay Banks is he has struggled against zone coverage. And the Chiefs, from what I can see, they've got some receivers and, of course, Kelsey, who are experts at finding soft spots in zone coverage. So the Giants are going to have to really tighten things up. And that was actually one of the things head coach Brian Dable talked about. When we spoke to him on Monday, he said, I wish some of the coverages had been a little tighter than what they were, because look, the Cowboys had gobs and gobs of space to exploit, and the Giants, there were guys that were 10 yards off, or they were backpedaling when they should be coming forward. And the Cowboys were able to rack up the yardage as well.
I love the sound of that. And it is something that with the backup receiver group that you're going to see from Kansas City, maybe we get a little bit of grace there and keep that competitive. I think right now with the status of Xavier, were they not being fully fleshed out yet, I think it will go right up until at least after practice on Friday, if not into the weekend. He brings a certain level that they want to get involved in the game. I don't know that they're willing to risk it, but that's a significant change in the way that they will choose to attack. And I think you also have to look for, if the backups are primarily the pass catchers outside of Travis Kelce, how does that actually function? And are they able to take the same kind of advantage? But I think a lot of practice against zone is probably what's going on this week.
Yeah, for sure. And, one other, matchup I want to talk about, and the Giants have struggled in this area. And I'm not really sure why, because, they've got Dexter Lawrence, who I've been calling all world, but he hasn't quite been playing like all world. The Giants' run defense has been very bad. It was a problem last year. It's a problem this year. And, Dexter today was talking to us in the locker room, and he said, I will be better. I will come ready to play. And, I just wonder, Dexter Lawrence didn't play a whole lot. He didn't play at all, I should say, during the preseason. I wonder if he wasn't quite in playing shape the first 2 weeks. And, you get Dexter Lawrence, who now is at 100%, who's in playing shape. The confidence is there. How much is he going to be able to wreck through the Chiefs' offensive line and just stop the running back and just get pressure on Mahomes?
I will say this. I would say that this is probably a get-right game for the Giants' run defense, because Kansas City cannot run the ball. I do think they want to run the ball, but other than Patrick Mahomes, they don't have the ability right now. Their running backs just don't have the speed or the ability to cut and use the outside zone that they used to run. So I do think that this is a game that I think actually the Giants could take advantage of the run defense, because I do think that that's a struggle for Kansas City right now, just trying to run the ball even.
It hurts me to say so, but I have to agree with that. Now maybe there's a glimmer of hope every now and then, and if they build upon it, you'll see some maybe a few more double teams than maybe zone blocks that you've seen in the past. I do think that they have a propensity or an ability at least to get in there and run man blocking and actually have some success. It's whether they choose to do it. That's really been the question, not only this season, but the last couple of seasons.
Why do you guys think that it's been so hard for Kansas City to run the ball? Is it because of injuries or just how they've been scheming it?
This guy 15 takes all the practice reps. They don't get to run the ball much in practice. I don't know what they keep doing.
You don't know what they're doing. Do they know what they're doing is the question.
Sometimes it doesn't seem like it when they're trying to run the ball. I just really think that the blocking scheme can be okay. It's just the running backs aren't hitting the holes when they need to be, and the vision hasn't been good enough. And there's multiple different scenarios where if you go watch the film, you'll see Pacheco in particular hit the wrong hole or not be patient enough to see the hole open up, and that becomes a problem.
And then from the Giants' perspective, one of the problems with the run defense is guys aren't getting off blocks. If you're not getting off blocks, guess what? You're going to have gobs and gobs of space to run if you're the opponent. So that's something, especially up front. The Giants invested so much in the defensive line. And again, it's the same problems we saw last year, which are quite frustrating. And as we all know, if you don't stop the run, then you're in trouble. And the last two games, the Giants gave up way too many, they had too many second and shorts, third and shorts. You want to create those long yardage situations, and the Giants just haven't done a good enough job of that. So maybe they'll get right this week if Dexter Lawrence comes to play and everybody follows suit. But we'll have to see how that plays out. So anyway, when we come back, we're going to talk about the keys to victory for these 0-2 teams. Can the Giants upset the Chiefs? The Giants are 5.5 underdog, I think, according to our friends over at FanDuel. So can the Giants pull it off? We'll talk about those right after that. Today's episode of Crossover Thursday is brought to you in part by 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee. Plus, you get B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love the most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost of energy when you need it most. Just think you can get a needed energy boost on the go without having to worry about the added calories that come from sugary drinks. So enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at www.5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5hourenergy.com or at Amazon today. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right means cashing in. With football back, PrizePicks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 play. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. All right, everybody, welcome back to Crossover Thursday, Locked On Giants, Locked On Chiefs. We've got Ryan, Tracy, and Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs. Myself, Patricia Traina from Locked On Giants. And gentlemen, it's time to talk about keys to the game. And I would like to start, if you wouldn't mind, on this one, because it's a big, big problem for the Giants. And it's potentially, I think, could be a get-right situation for the Giants. And that is the red zone production. The Giants are something like 1-7 in the red zone. The Chiefs, I believe, are tied for 20th in the league in their red zone defense. So if we could start there, I mean, from the Giants' perspective, I think the play calling has been part of the problem. They've called way too many wide plays that take forever to develop, which allows the defense to get caught up. But I'd like to hear from you as far as what you think has been the problem with the Chiefs' red zone defense.
It's tough, and I think part of it is you go back and you look at who they played. I think the Chargers didn't really get in the red zone a ton. They got in there enough to score points, but then you go up against the Eagles, and the Eagles have the tush push, and it's really hard to look at that scenario and just feel like the Chiefs are going to stop that. I mean, most NFL teams are not going to stop the tush push when they get in the red zone, and it's a close situation. So I do think it's partially who they've played, but the Chiefs defense also didn't play well the first week of the season. And when your defense is out of sorts and when you lose contain on a play where it's obvious you have to be able to contain the quarterback and you're just not hitting your fits right, that is what causes you issues, especially in the red zone where you talk about running things outside, but if you talk about running things inside, it's the angles that get you to the red zone or the end zone the quickest, and that's what causes issues. You don't hit your spot right, you don't hit your hole that you're supposed to be defending, and it turns into a big play. That happened against Saquon Barkley and the Eagles as well.
It is tough when you are a team that is built to defend the pass rather than the run, and you happen to get the Chargers and Eagles in back-to-back weeks. Now, I'm not saying that it's misrepresenting what they're capable of, but it's certainly week one. The lack of preparation showed its face, and now I think they see this as a get-right game, particularly between the tackles. To be able to attack that line of scrimmage, I think they're going to try to put that into play, but again, they are susceptible to some play action. We've seen a couple of bigger chunk plays come from that type of maneuver. So it is still questionable and a gelling defense in terms of what happens down low. Now, the opposite, unfortunately, is true as well. The one turnover that has cost them a ball game came when the offense was in the red zone as well. And of all things, to Mahomes, to Kelsey, turns into a game-changing play. As long as they can avoid that, I think the opposite will be able to hold true and they'll be able to put up points. They have to make sure that they hold the ball. And one of the things that I'm always interested in and what I want to know from you is how much is the key for limiting Russell? Is he now feel like he's back? Is there something that they need to do in order to take some of that away so that he in particular, but even if they bring in Dart, who I have a whole different theory on, in the red zone in particular, is there something that they can do to cause extra frustration or confusion for Wilson himself?
Yeah, I think that the number one thing, and we kind of saw it last week in overtime on that interception, that backbreaking interception, create congestion. Russell Wilson's what, 5'10"? I think that's what he's listed. I think he's a little shorter than that because I've stood next to him, and I think I'm a little taller than he is. But with all his gear on, maybe he's taller than me. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, cause congestion so that he can't see, and if he can't see, he can't adjust to maybe what's going on down the field or in the end zone or anything like that. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on. And, you guys mentioned Jackson Dart. The Giants do have a package for Jackson Dart in the red zone. He was practicing. Matter of fact, he was working on some of that stuff today at the end of practice. And it's just a matter of time before they bring out some of that stuff and see if they can't, catch the opponent off guard. Because look, when you have Jackson Dart in there, he moves a little bit better than Russell does at this point in Russell's career. So now you've got to account for Jackson Dart's legs. Whereas with Russell, Russell can move around if you need him to, but he's not going to scare anybody, I think, with his legs.
That's a huge thing. You talk about
here. Sorry, Chris.
No, go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
I love Dart's game, and I'm upset that they have to defend him so early in this season. So that's my piece.
All right, guys, real quick, let me get your key to the game. We talked about the red zone. I mean, do you agree, or is there something else?
I look at this game, and to me, it's a game where you have to get Mahomes going, and you have to get him going early, and you need to be putting in Mahomes and Reed need to be on the same page from probably the first day of practice this week. They need to go in, get in a room together and figure out these are the plays that I feel extremely comfortable with, and the script needs to come from that. You need to have bread and butter plays that can get Mahomes going early in the game because the offense has to be productive early on, because the reality of what you're seeing with this Chiefs offense is the consistency just isn't there. They haven't been able to make the play the one time, like every time last season that they needed just one play, it seemed like they found a way to get it done. It may not happen on first down. It may not happen on second down. Sometimes it happened on fourth down, but they found a way to get the one play to get them in the position to where they could win the game. This year, they can't do that. And it starts with them not being able to function well as an offense early in the game. And they need to put up points in the first quarter and maybe even get off to a lead against the Giants so the offense can actually feel like they're going in the right direction.
All right. So, guys, want to make a prediction? 0-2. Who breaks it?
Go ahead, Ryan.
I'm going to say the Chiefs. I need the Giants.
You're not alone, and I thank you because I have to agree with you.
Just in case you were afraid of hurting my feelings.
I don't want to, but I have to admit, if it was before last week, I would have been more adamant. But given the sparks in the life that the Giants offense in particular showed, I'm a big fan of Scadaboo as well. So I'd like to see him stay on the sideline because that kid will make plays. I'll tell you that. So I do think it may be more competitive than a lot of people think. I have this as a 3-point game. And maybe it's a lead that then gets chopped down, but I don't think it's going to end up being an absolute blowout or anything along those lines. I have the Chiefs winning by 3.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs are going to get the first victory in this one, and I think it's going to be a little bit more of a wider game, maybe a 7-point game, a touchdown win for the Chiefs. But I do think that this could go down to the wire, and I absolutely hate that. But just watching the Chiefs play over the past 2 seasons, that's how they've been playing. It's always a close game, and even if they are the better team, it's always a close game. So I don't like that, but that's kind of the way it's been.
I'm just hoping for a competitive game. I don't want to see a blowout. Nothing worse than a blowout. And the Giants just haven't done well on the primetime stage. I don't know what the reason is. I think they've lost now, I want to say 3 in a row on Sunday Night Football. So I just want a competitive game. I mean, if they lose, make it 1 score. If it's 7 or less, I'd be happy with that. Obviously, I'd be happy with a win. An upset win would be nice. But, I like I said, I've got concerns about the middle of the defense and how they're going to hold up against Kelsey and Mahomes, that connection there. So going to be a good one, guys. It's going to be a raise the roof type of night, Giants home opener. Sunday Night Football, there's going to be lights. I think they're handing out lights for the game to those who are attending. So we're going to all continue to break it down. I know tomorrow on the Locked On Giants podcast, we'll look at more details. I know you guys probably have more details before we get to game day. And then, of course, next week we'll wrap everything up with a nice little bow and move on to our next opponent. So that said, everybody, we want to thank you for making today's crossover edition of Locked On Giants and Locked On Chiefs part of your day. The NFL season is finally here. For your next listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler, the Madman Rowland, gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while my man Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. For Ryan Tracy and Chris Clark, I'm Patricia Traina. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on our respective shows tomorrow.